Have a mat.
I'll be right back.
No. Okay, we're gonna have to pretend, or David's going to get the lighter, okay? Because evidently. We'll see it last time. Oh, never mind, David. Larry is an Okay. Enough of that, all right? So thank you all for coming, and thanks Quentin for putting up the fan. If he had to get really bad off, he could put up another one, but it might interfere with what we're saying. Okay, the first reading was that one that caught my eye. And the title is Sounds of Silence, so I just took that. When I was a 16-year-old naturalist in training, we were instructed to sit in the forest and wait for something called the baseline symphony. It's the music of the landscape at ease, the confluence of insect, bird, and animal song, underscored by wind and water. Maybe you can think of some place where you've been, where you've heard all of those things. The dynamics of that symphony shifted as day progressed into night. There were brief susurrus, but it did not fall silent for long, except in the case of a disturbance. Silence in the forest often is an exception. It signals the onset of weather patterns, forest paths, an unnatural quiet spell, broken only by the occasional bird alarm. So there can be moments of almost total silence, even out in nature. A couple of years later, when she was 18, Elisa Wells went to Tulum in Mexico, and she was sitting on a beach at night, at midnight. The strangest quiet of my life. What is this place, I wonder? Then a sudden and a glittering wind sandblasted my face. I spent the next few hours hunkered down in a cabana and slept on the ground beneath the eye of the storm. I had forgotten one of my original lessons. Silence means something. In that case, it meant a storm. We're going to focus on other kinds this morning and the value of those silences. Right now, if anyone has a joy or concern, in the upper parish hall, instead of bringing in all the candles, we use stones in a bottle of water, in a dish of water for the summer. I don't know if there's any water in there too, but you can do that. If there's no water in the bowl, put some in. Okay. Right here, this bowl. Somebody did that bowl when we were doing the Empty Bowl project with the RE program, and it's beautiful. I'm sorry I didn't get that. But somebody who wants to do a joy or concern can make your way up. Well, if you like this putting in the water. It doesn't need to be too deep. I hope we're not going to get too many. Thank you.
This is really sort of a joke on me when I was in.
Just for the joys and concerns that are in your heart and have not been spoken this morning. One of the first articles I found when I started doing this research was by a gentleman by the name of Dan Ryan. And he was writing for a special blog, SHRM blog, which I haven't found out yet what it is, but I like what he wrote. Silence is something we don't hear much about, no pun intended. In our busy, energetic world today, we're surrounded by hustle, bustle, noise, and activity in almost everything we do. We have smartphones, tablets, computers, and a variety of other devices that invade and prevent silence. There is a value to silence, and I'll try to share a few examples in this post. As Alison Krauss once sang, you say it best when you say nothing at all. So what is the value of silence? Let me share just a few thoughts from my own perspective and add a few links with comments by other people wiser than I am. Silence allows us to notice things we overlook. Avoiding distractions allows us to focus more completely on the really important issues. Silence also allows us to hear things that are buried under the normal buzz of daily life. How many of you can hear the fan? Okay, when I'm talking, you may not be. Most of you probably won't hear. Silence also allows us to hear things that are buried in the mound, in the normal buzz of human life. All the cacophony of sounds that we're in our daily lives. One of the people he was referencing, Marilyn Price Mitchell, and I'm going to read her article, wrote an article about silence in a noisy world, where she shared this point. The act of sharing our experiences with others is the first part of developing reflective practices that lead to greater awareness and learning. So we don't always have to stay in our own cocoon. We can let others come in. And Dan Pedersen, whom I've quoted at the top of the order of service, had this insight in an article he wrote. We're afraid of silence because we equate silence with insignificance. We want to be heard and seen. We want to make ourselves relevant. We want to be somebody in the eyes of others. Silence can be golden, and sometimes our silences speak volumes when we don't respond. I encourage you to take time to isolate, reflect, and rebuild your own ability to see and hear what you might be missing. So ironically, the next thing is a hymn. So we can take a moment as you're finding the hymnal. And it is the value of time. It is find a stillness. And in both of our hymnals, it's the only one I found that really had anything to do with silence. At this time, I'd like you all to join with me in meditation. I will give you some thoughts, and then I'd like to have a moment of silence after that. Spirit of light and love, in the silence, in the stillness, we hear the call of our own heart, its tender dreams, its sorrows, and its miracles, of dreams becoming the promise of the future we celebrate together, our individual journeys and dreams, and our collective one. Knowing the journey is so much richer with others who long to share it. In the name of all that's holy, we pray. Amen. May it be so. At this time, we will have the offering. That will come around with the plate. Remembering that this summer, July and August, our share the plate collection is for Mainspring House and Evelyn House, the two homeless shelters that we are working with now. And you have been very generous in that. If you want to do a special donation, you can write out a check and put that to First Parish and put Mainspring and Evelyn in the memo line. Thank you very much, everyone. The second reading was referenced in the first one. The importance of silence in a noisy world. Believe me, we do live in a noisy world. We're saying all the time. Let's face it, the amount of conversation in the world is expanding exponentially. But it's not the same kind of conversation that most of us adults remember. And there aren't any young people for us to pick on today, so we'll have to think about them anyway. I was at a shopping mall the other day and observed a group of 8 teenage friends, boys and girls. They were walking together, each focused on their mobile device. Most appeared to be texting other people. A few were speaking on their phones. None of them were speaking to each other. And I think sometimes adults can be that way too. It's not just a teenage problem. As I watched with interest in this new phenomenon that allows us to engage in multiple modes of connectivity at once, I chuckled to myself when one of the boys fell into a girl as he tripped getting off the escalator. The mishap occurred because he was texting while walking. Sometimes that can be as hazardous as texting while driving. The teens laughed too, and then quickly they all returned to their own devices and the conversations they were having later. It's mind-boggling to imagine how many conversations were happening elsewhere while those 18 walked through the shopping center. But what's more important is to ask the question, when do young people find time to be in silence, to reflect on who they are in a world with constant chatter? Why silence is golden? The reason we should ask that question and encourage teens to explore silent places is because we know that self-reflection is important in human development and learning. John Dewey, a very renowned psychologist and educator, and an education reformer in his time, claimed that experiences alone are not enough. We need to perceive and weave meaning from experiences. And that often includes being with other people and letting them in. Both Denise and I, when I started with this title, were thinking about one song, The Sound of the Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. You'll find the lyrics on the back, and we'll try to sing them. I bet a lot of you know these words almost by heart, but completely by heart. So let's spell this one out a little bit more than we did on the one and the half. Okay?
Yes, please, because Denise doesn't do solo, so I need your help.
Yeah, don't make her take on another cat. She has enough already. So some opposing views in that piece, and we all have to decide when is the time and when it's not.
And we need to thank our Garfunkel for the music.
Yeah.
Right. The last reading I have to share is from Dan Pedersen, whose name is at the top, and the quote on the order of service will be included in this reading by him. It was published published in a magazine called Personal Growth. This is a big part. Most of us don't like silence because it causes us to confront ourselves. And sometimes we find staring back and emptiness. We're also afraid of silence because we equate silence and insignificance. We want to be heard and seen. We want to make ourselves relevant. We want to be somebody in the eyes of others. The desire to make ourselves relevant can be very strong, but in our quest to be heard and noticed and thought well of by others, we often drown out our own inner voices. We're constantly in search of something that we really already have. We already have everything we truly need within us. The peace we seek is not out there somewhere. It's in the here and now, in this moment, within us. If you want to know yourself, turn off the TV, the radio, the internet, and the running dialogue in your head. Go to a quiet place and spend time alone. This is where you'll meet yourself. This is where you'll learn what's truly important to you. While sitting in silence, we can hear and see things we otherwise wouldn't, and our desires become few and simple. We find our inner voice of contentment and realize that we're already everything we need to be. Silence helps bring us back to a place of rest and clarity within, away from the noise of the world. Guard this space in your schedule. It's more important than anything you do, because it's from there that you'll find the strength, purpose, and self-composure to be a better person for yourself and for others. Like sleeping, brushing your teeth, eating, going to work, and exercise, we need time for silence in our day. We need time in our day to cultivate silence so we can bring it with us into our daily actions and live with a sense of peace, even in the midst of stressful circumstances. We all really need that right now, right? All right, now it's your turn. If you've been sitting on your hands, if you want to come up and add something, which that might come up fairly easily. Maybe someone could volunteer to walk around with it if somebody has. Okay, David. Didn't you put it
Won't
up?
go
You can take
too
it
far,
down.
so
Yeah,
someone.
yeah, it won't go too far, but it'll go a little way. Okay, Karen. And if it won't quite reach you, maybe you can come up a little bit. Thank you.
I'm not often accused of being silent about anything. But I saw a thing this morning, on Gabby Gifford, who's married to a former astronaut, Mark Kelly. And, she has, since having been shot, fought for years to walk and to speak. And if you should go to your computer or wherever you can, phone if you don't have a computer, and see her speech, because it was breathtaking. And also a wonderful declaration of love between these individuals and their whole families.
I find it difficult to remain silent, even though I live alone. And I will pretend I'm talking to my dog when I'm actually talking to myself. And it's, yeah, that's that's what I do. And I have tried, saying, I'm going to spend today not talking, and I've never been able to do it, even when I've been completely alone for the day. So, I've maybe been able, I don't even know how much time I've been able to spend doing it. It's been just minimal. So, I don't know. I think more meditation is necessary. For me, the meditation that I do usually involves guided meditation. So there's some kind of sound going on anyway. So I need to work on it. So.
But also, I find, the world isn't silent at all. One of the things that I really, really like to do is be in my garden, and I don't vocalize to myself. I mean, I talk to myself in my house, but I find I don't do that in my garden. And I observe, I hear things, birds, bees, bugs, all kinds of things, the wind sometimes. And that's not really silent, but it feels silent. It feels very, very peaceful.
So I guess I'm a little bit of a contrarian about silence and meditation. Just to respond to what Dan said, I think that especially, and I don't live alone, but I spend a lot of time by myself and doing sort of solitary things. And it's like I get as much silence as I need. So I think you need to trust yourself. I mean, talking to yourself or to your dog, that's okay. That expression is a natural instinct and need as well. And so if you're spending, I would imagine you do spend a fair amount of time in silence if you live by yourself, and or silence in terms of making sound yourself. But as Janice said, I mean, I love to sit without speaking for a while. And often my mornings begin with a fairly long period of not speaking, other than say good morning to Nick, but to listen to the sounds around me. And there are a couple of places in the text, the Radiant Sutras text I study that talk about, it's like the power of sound leads you into the power of silence. And in silence, there's like spaciousness. And we're very seldom in this world in complete silence. There's, when I sit quietly on my deck in the morning, I can hear lots of birds. I can hear the traffic from 495 in the distance most days. And it still feels silent in a sense. I'm not making any of that sound at that point. One other thought, meditation related, of course, is that I do a fair amount of mantra meditation, and when doing that, there's a principle called the levels of voice, where you speak something, you whisper it, and then you sort of move your lips as if you're going to say it, but you do not make sound, and then let yourself dissolve into the inner resonance of the felt sound rather than the sound that you make. And that silent phase is my absolute favorite part of it. It's like, oh yeah, the sound still resonates inside you. So I feel like, yeah, many of us don't get enough silent time, either being quiet ourselves, and there are times when I'm guilty of talking too much too, perhaps now. But also when we're removed from external sound, and you'll feel what you need, and to trust that feeling. Listening to music is wonderful. It's not silent, but there is sort of in absorption in sound, you can find an internal silence. So that's my 2 cents.
Who's next? Me?
Come on to the front there, John.
Front, to the
Yeah.
front. You want to go, Lori?
I think Ginger had her hand up before.
Ginger, you want to come over? don't think it's gonna rain. Hola, causa. There you go.
Mine has some little pieces of what everybody mentioned, but I was pretty lucky, I guess, about silences, because I grew up as an only child. So I spent much time in silence, and I became very used to it. I became very much to like it. So it doesn't, I'm not afraid of it, or I don't dislike it anymore. I really do look forward to it. Sometimes I'm with people so much, I can hardly wait till I get home, so I don't have to hear all, hear all the chit chat going on. Also, this is not silence, as you say, but I think one of my favorite times of the day is right when I go to bed, and especially in the summer when your windows are open. You're laying there in silence yourself, but you hear all the night sounds, which are absolutely soothing and wonderful to my brain anyway. I'm not a great sleeper, so it happens just about every night, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. The other and final thing I'll say is, I think also the good thing about silence, if you can train yourself more for it, is you also open yourself up to really hearing other people and what they're really saying, not just the words coming out of their mouth, but what they're really saying.
Okay, I live across from the fire station. There's a rooster in my backyard. He thinks 2 o'clock is gone. I woke up last night because there was a burglar alarm going off. When the church burglar alarm goes off, it wakes me up. So I'm not really talking. Oh, at 7:30 every morning, the firemen start the machine that they need to make sure it works okay. That's loud. I remember as a kid jumping in the car with my mother's uncle, he was probably, I don't know, in his 70s. And we'd jump in there and we'd turn the radio on. And he was like, if the car was on, the radio was on. He'd listen to the radio when he parked his car. And we couldn't understand that, but I understand that now. I spend more time in my car now with the radio off than the radio on. And one thing I really like about painting is it's quiet. Carpentry is fun, especially when you do it with Barry Simon, but it's loud. Bang, bang, whack, whack. So I like the quietness of painting. Angela, are you next? Come on up. Pat, well, whoever it is, you gotta come over here.
Because Tom's not moving.
Well, the cord don't move.
Just so I can see the screen. Okay.
All right, one quick couple things that it reminds me of this topic is, first of all, kind of what I think Ginger was saying, that if you are not able to be quiet, it is difficult for the person, any other person that you're with, to be able to express themselves. And people that are able to be quiet and control their talking and speech tend to be the best listeners. So that was one thing. And another thing that it dawned on me that this topic really reminds me of is the Day of Silence, which is the practice that has been honored in the schools since about the 1990s of to honor the level of bullying and everything else that LGBTQ community goes through. And so I organize that in my high school every year, and I actually do see high school students that are able to be quiet all day, which is quite something to behold. And last year, last school year, we did it, and the kids ended the day in a GSA meeting by singing Bohemian Rhapsody. The whole thing, 5 minutes, it was great. So that really reminded me of that.
What day is that?
It's a day in April, usually. Yeah, I'll email you about that. I'm gonna try real hard on that day to get that information. So I'm gonna give it a shot.
Yeah,
Pat,
it's
Pat,
practiced all across the country,
Mhm.
all over the world, actually.
now Pat, I need you to stand to the side a little bit. Thank you.
So, similar to what Tom said, I'll sit on my back porch and I have Copper Pond in back of me. And I think it's gonna be nice and quiet and the motorcycles ride by or the trucks go by. So for me, the best place that I find silence and peace is by the ocean, by the lake, or in the woods. But the ocean and the lakes, I interpret the waves as breathing in and out as the tide goes. And there is nothing there except the water you're listening to, as long as there's no kids around. But that for me is where I find my peace. And if I'm down by the water or alone in the near a lake or in the woods, the breathing is of the water going in and out.
So I sometimes equate silence with patience, which I am constantly working on. And I have a lot of opinions. I like to share. I like to have good conversation with people, and I do find that sitting back and relaxing and listening, I do hear a lot more. People talk to me a lot more. They want to share with me, and I learn so much more. But it's a constant struggle, I'll admit. I do find that it's work.
What? Oh, Luella. What?
If I may sit here and tell you, I learned one of the most important lessons in my life about silence from my place in New Hampshire. And I had a family member come up and say, oh, I couldn't sleep last night. I couldn't sleep. It was so quiet. And when I was teaching, I used to pride myself on going to New Hampshire for the weekend with my cat and not saying a single word all weekend, other than a comment to my cat. And at night, I like to open the window and listen to the sounds of the forest, the trees. I quite often hear an owl having a conversation with another owl, and it's just so peaceful and quiet.
Do you have bullfrogs?
What's that?
Do you have bullfrogs?
No, I
Oh,
have
what?
a stream, but there are no frogs. But I was surprised, I heard turkeys one night.
Oh, yeah.
And I never knew turkeys were out at night.
They're big class of turkeys, they call them powders, but anyway.
Something Angela said, my mind is segues to something which isn't quite on topic, but I'll put it in anyway. Sometimes the part of silence is just for listening to other people when they are speaking, and I'm very bad at that. I interrupt a lot. Pardon me. But my brother told a story. He worked at MIT, and they had a new head of his department, and he went in to visit with him. And, he was telling him about what he was working on, what he was overseeing and all. And the gentleman sat there and did not make one single comment. And my brother began to get a little nervous. He thought, oh, gee, was he totally bored with what I'm saying or what? But when my brother was all through with his information, the gentleman spoke up and said, well, thank you very much, Dr. Perkins. I want to comment on. And he commented on several of the things that my brother had said. And my brother said, I think that was the first time in my life that somebody actually listened the whole way through to what I was saying, because we're always so eager to put in our 2 cents worth and what our view on something is. And so sometimes I try and bite my thumb and remember my brother has 4 and listen to the whole person. something they want to add before we do the final hymn? Oh, okay, well, thank you all for your listening and your comments, that's all appreciated. The final hymn is number 21. It has some written for it, not as much as the other one.
How many verses?
There's four. Why don't we, which one has?
Why don't we do 4?
Okay.
Do them all.
One,
We won't be around here again.
one and one and
Do all 4.
what?
All 4.
You're saying, how many want to do all four?
Come on, you bugs. There you go.
Okay.
If you don't want to sing, don't sing.
Overhang when I get a couple people to help me put them out. And I would like a couple of other people to collect the hymnals and put them back in the sanctuary. David, you don't need them for next Sunday, do you?
Let's leave them.
Leave them, okay, leave them. All right, nobody has to volunteer for that. Thank you all.